Hello and welcome to News9 Live. The Sengol has become one of the most important artifacts that will be placed inside the Indian Parliament. The artifact represents the transition of power from the British to India. It was an artifact that was made in the tradition of the Chola dynasty, where the sceptre or Sengol was used as an instrument of handing over power to the Chola King. The sceptre measures 5 feet in length and has a Nandi bull on top, symbolizing justice. At new Parliament inauguration, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be handed over a sceptre given to Jawaharlal Nehru on eve of independence. Union Home Minister Amit Shah said that the gold-plated sceptre places expectation of just, fair rule on the one who receives it. We are also joined by Dr. Shankar Kumar, who is an Associate Professor, Department of History, Hindu College, University of Delhi. But before that, let's listen to sound bites related to this story.
We are fourth generation, like Amar said. This Sengol was made by the second generation. It was made in August 1947. And it was the top of the Sengol has got a Nandi. Nandi depicts the Shiva, Shaivite all the background that they come from. The Chola dynasty is supposed to be the one which is where they use this as a symbol of transfer of power from one king to the other king. So when Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru consulted Rajaji about how to symbolize the transfer of power, because Mountbatten had asked him that as a symbol of transition of power from England to India, what do you all normally, how is it done in India? So when he was informed about this, he didn't have an immediate answer. So he asked Rajaji to give him a suitable symbol for transition of power. So when Rajaji himself consulted a lot of books and he went back in history, and then he found out that this is the Sengol, when it is handed over to the new leader.
I would like to thank our Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji for making sure that everybody in India knows about the Sengol, which is a Tamil word, which means Semmai, which is righteousness. If we know, in 1927, when the current Parliament building was opened, it was done on January 17th. It was done by the then Governor General Lord Irwin. When the ceremony happened, there was no trace of any Indian value, culture, heritage. But now I'm very happy to say, in direct stark contrast, on May 28th, when the Honorable Prime Minister will be unveiling the new Parliament building, it will be a festive occasion for all Indians, all of us, to honor, celebrate and cherish our civilizational heritage and a timeless tradition.
I'm sure none of these so-called like-minded opposition parties even heard of the Sengol or the legend and the story that goes behind the handing over of the Sengol. It's like handing over of the baton from a colonial, brutal British regime to a democratic India.
Sengol is the symbol of monarchy, that you should understand. Sengol is the symbol of monarchy, not democracy. At that time, when India was not a democracy, only part of India was democracy, not even democracy, diarchy and British Queen decided things. So Sengol was given not by the political parties, by a mutt. You know, mutt is also another symbol of monarchy. But Sengol is not the pride. They had given a Sengol when India got independence at the time, so that they want to keep it in the new parliament. But Sengol is a symbol of monarchy. Why Sengol means if the king should be equal to everybody. He should ensure law. He should ensure safety. He should ensure everything. Every right was there with the king. Now there is a judiciary. This judiciary can go against the government, or they will go by law. Whereas a king decide. There is no written law at that time. So if a king is holding a Sengol, which means he does justice to all his citizens, all his subjects, not citizens, subjects. So Sengol should be attached to monarchy and not democracy.
This beautiful piece of spectre is 5 feet in length, and you can see a Nandi bull sitting at the top, justifying, denoting justice. We are joined by Shankar Kumar, who is an assistant professor at Department of History from Hindu University. Chief, are you hearing my voice? Are you getting my voice?
Yes, I'm getting your voice.
So I would like to ask you, can you explain to our viewers the significance of this and of this spectre being given to Prime Minister Narendra Modi? As you know, one of the guests you just said, you heard, said that, that this is a symbol of monarchy, but this is not a symbol of democracy.
First of all, let me clarify that anything, be it in the realm of economy, society, or even politics, acquires meaning only in the cultural context. So for the panelist who was earlier speaking as part of your story around the Sengol, that it is historically bestowed by a religious head to a monarch in the absence of constitutionalism. Historically, he's right. But when a society, a community, a nation makes transition to a different state of polity, say from monarchy or colonial rule to full-fledged democracy, then there is this vacuum in terms of meaning that the popular constituent of the nation has to imbibe, and this is always mediated through cultural idioms. This is something which is inescapable for any nation. I'll just give you one illustration, and that should clinch the point. Even during the iconic French Revolution, when the revolutionaries came to create their own army owing allegiance to the Republic, and earlier the army owed allegiance to the monarch, Louis XVI. Now, when France started getting news of initial defeats at the hands of several other parts in Europe, they got a little scared whether the army was having enough, spirit and enthusiasm to identify themselves for the new nation that they had created, the new republic that they had created. Very soon they started getting the news of victories, so it settled down. So that is an issue. I mean, even in India today, you see, if you look at the armed forces, you will find several regiments still retaining the old names, which are ethnic in character, which are casteist in character, which are cultural in character, which are regional in character. That doesn't quite gel with the idea of independent nation that we came to create in 1947, free from British rule and so forth. But there are institutions, there are practices where culture has to intervene. It has to play a role to give a new meaning to quite a few things that we intend to do. So here I get his point, what he's trying to say. He's trying to say that now the authority is vested in the constitution. It is the constitution that empowers different wings of the state, say legislature or judiciary or executive, to do things. So there is no place for such cultural idioms to operate. But in reality, it doesn't happen that way. We have experimented enough. USSR, the erstwhile USSR, also tried to do the same with cultural idioms and so forth, or religious identities and so forth. It doesn't quite work. So one has to come to terms with this. And whatever practices, new practices, it can be very modern, progressive, and very, very up to date, constitutional in character. Still, it has to replace the old grooves through which things are understood at the popular level. And that's where
Well,
the cultural
Professor,
idioms, come into picture.
well,
And
Professor,
I
let me
think
also
that
let me add to your viewpoint as such. Since you made those things, it just reminds me about Karnataka's legislative assembly. So when it was being constructed, it was being constructed in the model of a palace, and people had asked as to why we are in fact constructing on the model of the palace. So the person who was behind the construction said that earlier the power was at the palace. Now it is at the with the legislature. So the transition of that power should be shown, and therefore the model the Vidhan Sauda on the basis of the palace to show that now the power is with the people, though it is modeled in the same way. So I get that idea of cultural idioms being used that you are in fact saying. But over here, the biggest issue I think the DMK has been raising is that does the sceptre only talk about monarchy? Should we, because the sceptre will be placed next to the speakers, can't the sceptre be even given to the people as such, representing the power being handed over to the people? You don't require a
is this
monarch to be given.
is this question directed to me?
Yes, Professor, to you.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, it is. I mean, I do get your point. These cultural practices also, over a period of time, have to undergo a change of meaning. The context change, the actors change, the audience changes, the times change, and therefore one has to see that. And this is what etymology is all about. I mean, a word comes to acquire different meanings at different points of time. I'll give you another illustration. The word revolution, I mean, it's till around 16th century, it only meant astronomical phenomena of one object revolving around something. Thereafter, it came to acquire a connotation which was revivalist in nature. Right? Something has gone wrong, and that has to be brought back to the earlier practice. And that is what the word revolution meant till around 17th century, till around the last quarter of the 18th century, say the Enlightenment and several other revolutions happening in Europe. So it acquired a meaning which is like irreversible, very cataclysmic, something which cannot go back to the original times. So it is that degree of change which is called revolutionary. So what I'm saying is that even a word or a practice or an entity over a period of time does undergo change in terms of its adherence, in terms of what it conveys. So the conveying capacity goes on expanding, or at times it even restricts. So that's why I use this word very carefully, that it is an inescapable thing. I mean, cultural idioms is something that you cannot do without.
Professor,
And history is replete with examples
Professor
where
Kumar,
it has to
if
be mediated. Yes, what has to be guarded against is that it does not lead to some kind of a very acute sectarian identification with one particular cultural idiom. And that is precisely what is being debated, that it is a
absolutely.
Shemite thing.
Absolutely. This is exactly
Sorry.
what I wanted to ask you, Professor, because, this was when it was commissioned by Rajaji, at that point of time, they were considered, him, Dr. Rajendra Prasad, P.D. Tandon and all, they were considered to be the right in the Congress. And, though Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, the first Prime Minister, did not, he took the spectre from them, and he underwent all the religious traditions which were all the rituals which were performed before that. But after that, he kept it in his house, and which was later turned to museum, and he described it as a walking stick. Do you see that right group to the current dispensation, and how the entire narration which is being built by the Bharatiya Janata Party?
Yeah, there are reverberations of contemporary politics in history, in tradition. So what I'm saying here is that, I mean, look at the other picture. I mean, why you are pitting, say, Rajgopalachari and Nehru vis-a-vis this particular scepter. There was another there was another cultural icon which was readily accepted, embellished as the national emblem, and that is the lion figure on a Sarnath pillar of Ashok. Now, this is all happening in the 1920s, 1930s. Imagine the times when this was being transacted. Kautilya's Arthashastra had been discovered, say, in the first decade, rediscovered, so to say, into prominence in the first decade of the 20th century. Mauryans were new. Identification of King Ashok with Devanam Piyadasi Raja of Ashokan inscription. All these things were new to a nation which was still under colonial rule, and it was fast trying to counter the imperial narrative of British being required to be here to give us pan-India kind of administration, which perhaps in their eyes, in their projection, we were not capable of. And Indian nationalist historians are trying to counter this narrative by saying that, well, very much in the deep past, as early as the times of the Mauryans, the Guptas, and so forth, we had monarchs who had been able to keep this entire subcontinental landmass under one administration, working perfectly fine. So what I'm saying here is that the idea of nation that Nehru was peddling at that point of time might have to do with selection of the Sarnath lion capital as the national emblem. So that was very much at play, and there were other, little right-wing tilted congressmen, all right, who were, looking for some other idioms. And this particular issue of sceptre I would like to, history person, I would like to frame it in that context. And
Well,
so it was, and it was settled in favor of one. But at this point of time, to give prominence to several other, so to say, neglected components that couldn't quite make it to prominence at that point of time is okay, provided it does not incite sectarian divisiveness.
That's very well put, Professor Shankar Kumar. The spectre, the historical Sengol, which was being kept in the museum in Allahabad, in Prayagraj, will now occupy the pride of the place in the new parliament, which will be inaugurated on Sunday. The spectre will now be seated alongside the speaker's chair, and this is going to be a big ticket event as far as the inauguration of the new parliament is concerned. Thank you, Varghese. Thank you, Professor Shankar Kumar, for being part of this show and explaining to us what exactly this spectre means and what is the historical significance of this act by the BJP government.